Kathy, I'm super excited to welcome you on this podcast because you are the serial CTO. You've been in the trenches for over 3 decades. You have been also working across different industries. You have co-founded 4 companies. You also had one exit. So I could just keep enumerating all of these accomplishments, but we will probably get to more of them. But one really stands out, which is that you also co-founded the CTO level framework. So there are different levels, right, of being the CTO. And why don't you tell us a bit more about what are the most important characteristics that each CTO should pay attention to?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I think the CTO job is very complex, right? There's just so many things, hundreds of issues that we are presented with every day that we've never heard of or don't know how to resolve. And so for CTOs, it can be very overwhelming. But in my role in being a technologist for so long, I believe that the CTO role boils down to 4 key areas that everything we do falls into these 4 key areas. And those are really highlighted on the CTO levels framework. The first one being speed. Our business expects speed from us, speed of delivery, speed of process, turnaround. They ask us for questions. They want answers quickly. And so the primary role of a CTO is speed. The second role of a CTO primary focus is shield. Our job is to shield our business from threats, whether that's cybersecurity, whether it's our tech stack being modern enough that we can hire effectively when we need to hire. It could be security compliance. There's just so many things that go into really shielding our business from threats. The third is, as a CTO, we really need to be able to sell effectively. And I don't mean go out and sell to clients and customers and prospects. What I mean is selling our ideas. That is a strong product presence within your organization, the ability to build proof of concepts and MVPs and facilitate conversations and collaborate with your peers. That is all under the umbrella of sales. So we need to be strong salespeople within our organizations to get our ideas across in our communication effectively so that we can solve problems for our business. And the fourth focus of a CTO really needs to be constantly learning and evolving. And that is really what we call stretch on the CTO levels framework. Stretch ourselves. What are our gaps? Where are we, let's say, not delivering the best for the organization, and how can we evolve that? And so that stretch area brings in thinking like lean processes, iterative ways of thinking. So the 4 areas really boil down to speed, shield, sales, and stretch. And I think everything we do as a CTO falls into those 4 areas. For me, that really helped me simplify my job, which is a very complex job as a CTO. It really helped me simplify the way I thought about my job into these 4 areas.
Hmm.
And that's shown on the framework.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you mention the sales part, right? Because it usually doesn't kind of go hand in hand with the technical people, with people who were usually software engineers and eventually got promoted. You know, sales is not really in our blood, so to speak. And so how can one go from being the rather introverted person who doesn't really want to, sell kind of internally the ideas or present publicly, to being really good in this?
Yeah. So as technologists, early on in our career, I'd say up to right about the senior engineer level, our job is to learn how to code effectively, how to deliver products effectively, right? Which is a very introverted, I take direction and I implement on that direction. But the moment we go from a senior engineer to a staff engineer, we're now moving into skills we've never really had to implement before. And those are, how do I share my ideas so that I can facilitate a discussion and get to agreement on how we're going to proceed on architecture issues, right? So that staff engineer really needs to learn how to sell their ideas. And it's a foreign concept to us as engineers. We don't have to do it. So now when you hit that staff engineer, you have to start to adopt all these other skills that you never adopted before. And of course, as you become the VP or the director or the VP, now you're selling process. Now you're hiring people. Again, all of these are sales. How do I pitch our company as a place you'd want to work? How do I pitch the process so that we're going to deliver this massive project on a timeline and we're going to deliver it effectively? How do I collaborate and get a bunch of people together who don't agree to come together and agree? And by the time we become the CTO, the skills we're leveraging are completely different than the skills we are leveraging as a senior engineer. And so we have to begin continually stretching ourselves to up level into those skills that we've never done before. And the way to do it is to practice, have the conversations, go into the conversation with the mindset of, I want to get us to a good plan, rather than going into a conversation from the mindset is, I need to tell them what to do, which is what I see most people doing wrong or ineffectively, is I need to get my idea across isn't as important as we get to the outcome the business needs. And so I think at that point for sales, we need to shift our perspective to be, what outcome do we want to achieve?
And now when you talk about the business needs, I guess it's also important to start talking the business terms, to use the terminology and speak with other stakeholders. So based on your experience, how do you go from someone who has been coding and transition to being the director, eventually VP and possibly a CTO, and suddenly has to engage with completely different colleagues, right? With a CSO or with a CFO or with other C-level executives. So where to even learn these new keywords and the new jargon?
Well, I think it starts first with understanding who's your first team. There's this concept of first team. It comes from Patrick Lencioni. He's an avid business writer. When we're a senior engineer, let's say, our first team is the team around us, the other engineers on our team, right? But as we become, let's say, a director, our first team is not the team beneath us. Our first team is the other directors. And then when we become a VP, our first team is the other VPs, and so on and so forth, all the way up to the C-suite. So it's changing our perspective of understanding who is our first team and what's the relationship I need to have with my first team. So as a VP of engineering, your job needs to build strong relationships with the VP of customer service and the VP of product and the VP of finance. And by building that strong relationship, you're working to really understand their business and their needs. What are their needs? What is the need of the VP of finance from you as the VP of engineering? And how do you build a strong relationship there? And as you bring curiosity to that conversation, you start to learn in their terms what's important to them. I do bring a very curious, inquisitive point of view to my one-on-ones with those people to really understand their business. I want to understand how finance operates and how engineering can support finance. So that's the first way I'd say, be curious and recognize that they are your partners. It's probably the biggest failure I see when I coach CTOs is that they're not seeing those other C-suites as their partners, as their first team. The second thing I do is like, go educate yourself. I needed to learn finance. And so I went to Coursera and I took a 6-week course on Coursera to learn all the financial terms, right? So that I could have better conversations with the head of finance. I've taken other simple courses on marketing just so that I can understand how marketing operates and have better conversations with marketing. And so this again gets back to that stretch goal of how do I stretch myself to learn their area enough so that I can have valuable conversations with them.
This is actually a great tip to enroll in some of these financial marketing sales courses just to expand the horizons and learn beyond the technical stuff.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of these like finance for non-finance people, marketing for non-marketing people, right? It is a way to learn very effectively.
And based on your experience now, because you work as the fractional CTO, if you join a company as the fractional CTO, who do you engage more with? Is it the development team, the engineers, or do you rather spend more time with the other C-suite team members?
Yeah, so I typically come in as a fractional or a fractional interim CTO today for mid-sized companies. So companies that are, let's say, 10 million to 100 million ARR. And those companies are facing rapid growth. They are, not a startup anymore. They found product market fit, and now they need to figure out how to grow, and they don't have a lot of the operational process in place that they need to be able to grow. And I have a long history in my career of working with companies who have been at this phase and achieved that growth as a result. So I have a lot of experience with that. I'm usually brought in, to be honest, after a CTO has been fired. Or that CTO has left under not great terms. And so as I come into these, my job is really to stabilize and transform the organization. And so it really just depends. Is the problem with the CTO role downwards into their organization that I need to spend more time with? Or is the problem that there wasn't a strong relationship outwards with their peers? And most often it's that the relationship outwards is not happening. And so I do spend a lot of time in these fractional roles, working cross-functionally, like coming to the head of product and saying, hey, the software development lifecycle, we have all these roadblocks in it. How can we surface them and remove those roadblocks so we can gain more speed within the organization? Or working with the head of CS and saying CS doesn't have the tools that they need, and finding that out, and then determining how we can get that tooling into the roadmap. And so I do orchestrate. A lot of my time is spent orchestrating across the organization to build organizational transformation and growth so that we can get more speed, shield sales, and stretch. And then my job is downwards to coach the leaders within that organization. Like there's usually directors, might be a VP or something in place, is to really coach them to then build their relationships across with their peers. And then bring in strong process. So I am a very big process person. I like lean process, but I believe process frees us to be able to work on what we want. And so the more continuous cadence, the more predictable process that we have about how we run the organization, the calmer our organization can be, and therefore we can move from reactive to proactive. So that's how I typically work. Oftentimes, I'm also helping the CEO as their thought partner to understand how to restructure their organization, to help them evaluate other leaders. I'm helping them hire their next CTO, because often I don't want to be a full-time CTO. I'm past that. I've done that. I want to have a bigger impact. And so I'm often helping craft the profile for the new CTO that they're going to hire to bring into the business that will more effectively work with the organization.
Well, this job looks very interesting, very appealing to a lot of people, because you have the opportunity to work for different companies, and you don't need to start a company from scratch as a lot of CTOs and co-founders do. So that's also why a lot of people in our community, they look at this role as something very cool, and they would like to get to a level where they are fractional CTOs as well. Maybe for smaller companies, but still they wonder how to actually go from a full-time role to a fractional or interim CTO role. So what would be your best advice? How to transition?
Yeah, when I've always looked at like the last part of my career, I really wanted to have the biggest impact on the world that I could. And so part of building CTO levels framework was about giving back to CTOs and helping CTOs be effective in their job. The stats show that the average CTO tenure is 18 months. That's really low, right? And so there's a lot of churn in the CTO role. And I think if we better educated CTOs, we could stay in our roles longer. We could be more effective, right? And that is really all those business skills that we need to build. And so I've always looked and admired those people who were really successful that were ahead of me. And so as I was looking toward the end of my career, I was like, okay, I want to be that person. But I really realized that I needed to spend the last 10 years in my full-time roles preparing myself to deliver as a fractional or an advisor in that capacity. And so I really put a roadmap and a process in place. Like I said, I've been through growth multiple times. Most of the code I've created and my teams have created is still in production, even 3 decades later.
Right.
And so I've had a lot of, I've been blessed to be in situations that were highly successful. And as part of that, I realized my niche. What's my niche? Right. And I think that's the most important thing if you want to do this role in the future, like I am, you have to understand what your niche is. My niche is product operations, speed, effectiveness, um, business transformation, technical transformation. And that's my niche. And my niche is most effective with mid-sized companies. Someone else's niche might be different. They might love working with early stage startups, ideation, getting to product market fit. That might be their niche. But first, understand what's your niche, what brings you joy,
Mm.
right? And then craft an advisory role around what brings you joy. And then sell into that niche. And so most people think, oh, I'm just going to be a fractional engineer, a CTO, and I can do it for everyone. A
Mm.
fractional CTO for a 10-person company is entirely different from a fractional CTO for 100 or a 300 or 500-person company. All these profiles are highly different. And which is the profile that you fit in? And then craft a path to get there. I've worked from early stage as a founder all the way through. My largest team was 450. And I've led all parts of technology. So product engineering, research, design, data. I've led all of security, all of them. And so I needed to really take all that and say, okay, I could do all of this, but what really is my niche? And so I literally now work with only mid-sized scale-ups as a
Mm.
fractional. And then I spend the other half of my time coaching because I want to have a bigger impact in the world. I'm better served coaching an early stage startup CTO than I am being an early stage startup CTO, right? And so the more awareness I have about myself and what brings me joy and how that joy can solve problems for other businesses, that's how you craft a highly successful fractional or advisory role.
Interesting. And you also mentioned something very cool about the impact. The role of the CTO can also be impactful. I mean, your impact is also through coaching, right? But a lot of people don't have this level of experience yet, and they are just kind of in quotes, just CTOs. So how this CTO who has a great job, full-time job, managing a team, how they can make this role a bit more impactful?
Right. So if you're a full-time CTO and you have this vision that you, let's say, want to be a fractional CTO sometime, I think it really starts with first saying, okay, what problems do I like to solve for people? Right. And then let me go out and solve a bunch of those problems. One thing you can do as a full-time person is go mentor in accelerators,
Mm.
right? That's a very low impact way to build the skills of becoming an advisor. So I did that. I actually went through Techstars as a founder in 2017, and then I've mentored in Techstars since then. I'm one of their global mentors. That was a technique I used when I was full-time to actually build the skill of advisory
Mm.
and deliver on my impact I wanted to deliver on the world. I want to create a ton of great successful CTOs. So the only way to do that is to interact with a lot of CTOs. So as a full-time person, go seek the situations that allow you to practice the impact you want to have in the world. The more you practice it, the more successful you become at that, the more you actually open the doors for possible fractional roles in the future. For a good example is I'm a fractional CTO right now for a company that's a Series B, about $10 million company. And I met them 3 years ago in an accelerator. And then that turned into a fractional role. And I was working full time at that time. I was their I did not mentor them, but I meant them and I talked to them a few times. And then 3 years later, they come back to me and they say, okay, now you're fractional and we need a fractional. Let's partner. Right. So these relationships pay off long term. So not only are you building the skills, you're building the network that will help you transition to a fractional in the future. If you love coaching, then just go start coaching. Maybe that's something you want to explore. And then a year into it, you find out I really don't like coaching, right? You can start coaching someone tomorrow. You don't have to have a certification. You don't have to have training. Just start helping other people and see if you like it. You don't even have to be paid to practice it, right? So I started as a free coach, and now, of course, I get paid for coaching and I'm certified and trained and everything, but I didn't start that way. I started by just going out and practicing the thing that in 10 years or 5 years, I was going to do full time. So
This is very, very strategic approach. And also this long-term outlook, I guess, helps to set the expectations right. Because now when you mentioned that they came back to you after 3 years, is just crazy if you kind of think about it, right? We are living now in the age of instant gratification, dopamine hits, right? Everyone expects results the next day. And then some clients come to you after 3 years.
Yeah. The thing to remember if you want to be a fractional or an advisor or whatever is you are a business. So I am a business now. Kathy Keating Consulting is a business. I have to do finance. I have to do marketing. I have to do, customer service. And then oh, by the way, I am the product, right? The fractional product. And so if you want to do this, you have to think about how am I going to build all those skills? How do I pitch myself as a solution to a problem? How do I price it? These are all skills that need to be built, and we can practice all of them over the course of working full time. We can even practice some of the skills in our company. Like maybe there's an acquisition your company is looking at. Well, get yourself on that team and be part of that process and understand how acquisition pitching happens and what's important there, right? These are skills that we can then later utilize when we move into a fractional role as a company. So
yeah. Well, now when you actually say it, it occurred to me that the CTO can even practice the sales call, for example, with some leads, even if he or she does not have the intention to start as a fractional CTO, because you can always say like, hey, the timing is not right on my end. I'm not ready to take on a new project, but still can go through the process of the sales call, kind of, if we call it this way.
Yeah, one thing I've done several times as a CTO was build partnerships, strategic partnerships. So I partnered with the head of revenue or the head of sales, and we went out to enterprises and pitched white labeling our product as a plug-in to their product. And I've done that multiple times, closed those deals, built pricing models in partnership with the head of revenue. This is not like typical CTO work, but it was me being his partner in those conversations as well, which is great practice, right, of sales. But also me learning those skills, like how do you pitch and sell to an enterprise that they should buy your product, right? So all of this is, I mean, as my job as a CTO, I don't look at it as just the pillar of technology. I look at my job as a CTO is ensuring that the business runs effectively and how technology is a part of that. And so it's a different viewpoint of the role. Instead of looking down my silo, it's looking across about how do I enable the business across by bringing my expertise as a technologist. And so that's a mindset shift for a CTO to make.
And we keep talking about the role of the CTO, but what about all these other roles that are very similar? In some cases, just labeled differently. In some cases, there are some differences. What do you see trending now on the market? I'm just thinking about the roles of CIO, CISO, CAIO. Do you see some other roles as well? Yeah,
There's a
that's a new
bunch of
one.
CX roles, right?
Mhm.
So one thing I see a lot is CPTO, so the head of
Mhm.
product and technology. That's becoming a thing. Um, I've been CPTO for most of my companies. In other words, I've run both product and engineering, which makes me a very product-focused CTO. I do think as a C-suite, if we really truly are focused on ensuring that the business is successful, we will eventually take on areas that we've never run before. And that's, I believe, a good thing. It's it's a slightly different focus. How do I take the work that I've done and put it into another domain? So like CIO is typically more IT focused. It's you see CIOs more often at services companies. You see CTOs more often at product companies. So you know those roles to me are very similar, but also different, right? So, but again, understanding how your IT team works is important.
Yeah.
The CISO is you know security and compliance, right? As a CTO, we need to understand how security and compliance runs. And when we're moving from startup to scale up, we're probably running security and compliance. And so we have to learn it. And I know many people that move from a CISO role to a CTO role, back to a CISO role. And I could move into those roles as well. I've run security and compliance multiple times. I think it's really helpful to broaden our skill sets and not say we're just about the tech stack. You
Mm.
know, we have to understand how we're shielding our company from threats and therefore the CISO role.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and of course, then there's the difference between the CTO and the VP of engineering. You know, that's often a difference. The VP is usually internal people and process. The CTO, by the time you have those two, you're a large enough company. The CTO really is about the technical advocacy, the architecture. The CTO is often working externally in the company, out in the industry. And again, that gets back to the CTO needing to be someone who is business savvy to be able to do that CTO role effectively. So
Interesting. Also, you mentioned the CPT overall. Do you see this also on people's resumes on LinkedIn, for example, or is it
yeah,
just something that is kind of internally somehow shared within the team? Like, hey, you work here as a CTO, but you also manage the product within the organization.
it used to be just internally. You were CTO that managed product. So most of the times I did that. I didn't officially have a CPTO title, but I ran product as well. I'd say probably in the last 2 to 3 years, we see companies um, publishing these roles. We see it on resumes. I know many people who now officially hold the title.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think, because this is a whole nother podcast probably, but I see the business from a series of business flows. So like sales and marketing is a business flow, product and engineering is a business flow of the organization. And what I mean by a business flow is product can't deliver without engineering and engineering can't deliver. So there's this symbiotic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but traditionally in the past, we've bifurcated that role. Product and engineering reports to the CEO, and therefore the CEO who doesn't understand either area has to, um, you know, deal with issues between product and engineering. So you have someone in charge of resolving those issues who doesn't know how to resolve those issues. And so companies recently have realized they need to combine that flow. They need a person at the top of that product engineering flow who strongly understands product and engineering, and so who can make the right decisions for the business, where the CEO can't make those decisions because they don't have that skill set. So I think that's why we're seeing it more prominent in the market now, is businesses are realizing if they bring those two areas together, they'll be more effective as a business because the leader understands how to arbitrate across those two areas.
Yeah, well, we will need to start monitoring this role as well because we, my colleagues, they also monitor the market, see how many people change jobs within the CTOs, CIOs, CISOs, but not CPTOs just yet.
Yeah, check it out. It's really rising right now. There's entire write-ups and stats starting to come out about it. So.
Yeah. And what about the chief AI officer role? Is this something you have also seen within your community?
I have not. I've seen it often called the chief data officer. So it typically falls under data. Maybe it's just too new for me not to have seen it. But yeah, AI is growing in prevalence, right? With all the LLMs and the innovation that's happened in the last year. I think probably 90% of the CTOs I coach and advise are all building LLM products or integrating LLM into their business. I've worked in AI for many, many, many years myself, so I love that. But yeah, I would assume we're probably going to start to see that because we're going to see a lot of businesses that are primarily AI based, right? And so that role would become more prominent as people gain that skills. So, whereas before it might have reported in, like the VP of artificial intelligence might report into the CTO, it might become a prominent enough role to make a C-suite for it.
Awesome. Well, a lot of exciting opportunities ahead, I guess. Exciting times ahead of us. So that's wonderful. And before we wrap it up, is there any kind of last advice that you would like to give to people who are now listening to this podcast? They are really energized. They are keen to make a dent, find some impactful role going forward. But they, look for some really cool, next step to make. Is there any final advice for them?
Yeah, I think all of this is possible for you. Your whole career is possible. Wherever you want to take it is possible if you have really great self-awareness of your strengths and your weaknesses. And when you have weaknesses, hire into your weaknesses or learn from others to grow. So that at the very beginning I talked about stretch yourself, continuously learn, continuously grow. Like, have curiosity and wonderment about that versus seeing our weaknesses as negative. Let's see it as a positive opportunity for growth. And I believe if you take that perspective, the whole world is available to you because you'll want to step in and grow and get further and explore new things. And so that to me is the most important skill a CTO can have, is to recognize their gaps and then lean into those gaps. So
That's a great one. Thanks for sharing. And where can people connect with you and learn more about your work? And if they would like to get coached by you, how they can connect with you?
yeah, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Kathy Keating, or they can go to my website, kathkeating.com. Or if you want to learn about CTO levels, you could go to ctolevels.com and get to me there as well. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find on the internet for sure. So yeah.
Awesome. You are one of the few female CTOs, so I guess
Yes.
that makes it easier.
Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be that hard. There's probably not another Kathy Keating CTO.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing all these insights. It was very useful. So we will be in touch. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks. It was a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to hearing from people about how it influences them. So cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.